Movies can have a lasting impression on you and bring back great memories. Certain images you will always remember. Things that have been with me all my life and keep getting added to with every movie I see.
I will turn this place into the fucking Wild Bunch if I think you are fucking with me.
E.T. from home.
This is the end of your rotten life, you motherfucking dope pusher!
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Welcome to My Cellular Heart Podcast, Season 4, Episode 136. This is a podcast where we take two films that live in our head and heart and bring them together over two episodes by one topic or theme. I'm your host, Philip Duke, and I am here with...
his cousin Chip. Hello, everybody.
And there will be spoilers and all that goodness. This one is more one that lives in my head and heart, and then I shared it with Chip. So we'll see what Chip thinks about this film.
And he's been talking about it for years.
Yes.
Like talking about making a remake and doing a whole new version of it.
When I first discovered this film, I was like, oh my God, I need to rewrite this, send it to Flower Films for Drew Barrymore to do. But that sorry, my dogs are going crazy. But that she wouldn't play. I wanted her to play a Barrymore, but she wouldn't play a Barrymore part. She'd have to play like Joan Crawford at the time, or even play the Greta Garbo role. And then I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And
but couldn't she be the thief? Couldn't she play that role or something or could she play the one that's dying?
I might have thought of that, of her being
just do gender switches for everyone.
I think I did think at one point. I was thinking first of her being Flemshin, and then I'm like, no, she can't. She's not. She was getting older at that time. This was like 15 years ago or whatever, more. Yeah, 20 years ago. And then I thought, oh wait, she could be the thief or the dying person, and then have a guy, good-looking guy, like this whole thing. Yeah. But anyway, a couple things right off the bat. William Hurt passed away on March 13th. You probably knew him as General Ross from the Marvel movies, but he was also in Body Heat and The Big Chill and Altered States. I remember my parents rented Altered States, and that was one where I remember I was sitting in the room and I'm like, this is just weird. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's kind of freaky. Like, I got to stop watching this.
Is it weird that the first thing I think of when I think of him is Broadcast News?
No, that one too. That was one he was in. And then I read something not really good to pay homage to him, but that he supposedly raped Marlee Matlin was saying that he raped and abused her. But when they asked her, what do you have to say? She was like, he's a good actor. He taught me a lot. And, because they were dating. But that's the thing. When people are dating, they think like, oh, if I want sex, I can just get sex. No, you still need permission. Like, yeah, fuck, you're going to get your dick cut off like Lorena Bobbitt will do that shit. Also, our friend Tim and Alex and Nick and the cast have all gotten honorable mention for Best Indie Short for Sushi at the Oneiros Film Awards in New York. And they got semifinalist at the March 2022 Indie Short Fest Los Angeles International Film Festival. It's a mouthful, but I was like, oh my God, that's like so cool. And like I told him, I think when he was on the show, I was like, it's going to be great. Because if you become a Steven Spielberg, I'll be like, I'm going to come over to your house and I'm going to go swimming in your large mansion in the pool. Like, it'll be awesome.
I realized something, though. We're missing one thing in this whole podcast. There's a canned clap button. For things like that. They're like, yay. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll add that, or you can work on that. You give me the sound and then I'll just overdub. Make 3,000 of them. Corrections for last week's show. There are none.
Dun, dun, dun. Wait.
There you go. Yes. Yeah.
Yay.
So now, unless you have anything else, we're going to get on with the show.
Let's do it.
All right.
I was ambitious then. We were drilled like little soldiers. No rest, no stopping. I was little, slim, but hard as a diamond. And I became famous and... But why am I telling you all this? Last night I didn't know you at all.
I am Felix Benvenuto Freiherr von Geiger. My mother called me Flix.
No, Flix. Oh, that's sweet. And how do you live? And what kind of a person are you?
I'm a prodigal son, the black sheep of a white flock. I shall die on the gallows.
You know, you're entirely different from what I expected.
Different? How?
Oh, I don't know. I thought you were more of a coquette, not so ladylike.
What did you expect?
Wouldn't you like to call me by the first name?
Well, I don't know what he wants. I never saw him before.
I know you. I've kept your books for you, and I know all about you. If one of your employees was half as stupid in a small way as you are in a big one... What are you ready?
So I couldn't find a TV spot or a radio spot, like nothing. All I could find was that trailer, but I cut out the beginning where it's like the words and stuff, and I just put things in there. But anyway, it's such a big movie where some of these movies you go, where would I find how to make this into a trailer? Yeah. And I just figured out our other Nicolas Cage movie, Chip. So scratch everything. Red Rock West. Red Rock West.
Yes.
So this movie, Grand Hotel, 1932, Chip and I had a conversation. We're doing Nicolas Cage coming up, and we had to figure out what goes with the massive weight of talent, and that one does. Yes. The plot, a group of very different individuals staying at a luxurious hotel in Berlin deal with each of their respective dramas. Stars Greta Garbo as Grusinskaya. So that was originally it was almost going to be Paula Negri. And then she turned it down, and then Greta Garbo was like, okay. And John Barrymore is Baron Felix von Geigern. And it was almost John Gilbert, who Garbo used to be her former fiance. And they had been in some movies together, and she was like, I want him. And they were like, no, we're going to do John Barrymore. And she was like, okay. And also, John Barrymore took a 3-picture deal just so he could work with Garbo. Like, that's how great she was. Like, when I'm watching her in this movie, this may be, I was telling Chip off mic when we weren't recording, that this is the only movie of hers that I've seen. I know of the other films, but she seems to me like a Gary Cooper, like kind of a naturalistic actor, like just kind of, and that's where he was like, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll sign a 3-picture deal if I can work with her. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, it seemed watching her, it seemed like she also like she kind of might have made up her own lines or reacted to things her own way, and the director was like, perfect.
Yeah,
like it just seemed like it.
I was watching that too. Certain things, the way she was holding her hand or the phone, and like different things, and then Joan Crawford as Flemchen. She also turned the role down because she thought most of her stuff would be cut by the censors, but Irving Thalberg assured her that it wouldn't get cut. So Irving Thalberg, it's Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg. Irving Thalberg had the idea of like, let's put all of our stars in one movie, because MGM was like, we have more stars in the universe or the sky or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that was at the beginning of watching this movie on the HBO Max. That was what the introduction the lady said, was that this was the first movie ever to be filmed and put out that actually had all of their stars, where they threw all their stars at you. And so it won the Academy Award because of it. It's like, well, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah. But sometimes you go back and you look at Oscar winners and you go, oh, this one should have won. Saving Private Ryan should have won over whatever, Anyway, Wallace Beery is General Director Pricing. So he was kind of like, I don't want to, this guy's like an evil guy. I kind of don't want, and he never changes. You think like maybe he'll be better. No, he's always a bad guy. But they were like, for some reason, this interested him. They were like, you'll have a German accent. Nobody else will, but you'll have a German accent. You can have a German accent. He was like, okay, I'm in. I'll sign the
Nice.
deal. Lionel Barrymore as Otto Kringeline. So that was almost Buster Keaton, who really wanted the job. Buster Keaton like was really going for it, and then they were like, no. And if you think about it, you might have been wanting too much humor, from him. And that Chip's not doesn't watch a lot of old movies, but Lionel Barrymore, that's the old man from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
The mean banker.
Yeah.
So and Louis Stone as Dr. Odenschlag. So he had the thing on his face, the birthmark. And he's the one that says, people come, people go, nothing happens. Written by Vicky Baum. She wrote the book, and then William A. Drake wrote the play and the film. So MGM was like, let's do a play. And they did the play, and then it did so well that they were like, okay, now we can do the film. The play did well. Let's do the movie.
Nice strategy.
Yep. Directed by Edmund Goulding. So, are you ready to get into some recasted?
Oh, yeah.
I know Chip is dying for it, but I guess I go first.
Yep.
Grusinskaya, who's a Greta Garbo character. Jennifer Lawrence.
Nice.
Baron Felix von Geigern, John Barrymore character. Bradley Cooper.
Of course.
So
that's what you were saying.
Because I was going to pick the guy that you picked last week. The guy from Inception, that they went into his mind, has a weird name. He was in Dark Knight. He played Scarecrow.
Oh yeah. Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. So I was almost going to pick him, and then when I picked Jennifer, I was like, oh no, Bradley Cooper. It'd be great. They've been in several movies together. Yeah. Flemshin's the first one that I casted right away. I was like, Anna de Armas, like perfect. Yeah. Like she is so sexy and funny and cool, and boom, like yes.
Yep.
And general director pricing, Stellan Skarsgård, because he's always like evil and like and like him being like kind of creepy on Ana de Armas, you'd be like, fuck this guy.
That would work. Oh god, yeah.
And Otto Kringeline, I know I've used this guy before, but I love him. Mark Rylance.
Okay.
Because he's Ready Player One. He played like that old guy in the Don't Look Up. Plays kind of an old weird guy. And so I could just see him, he was in Dunkirk, like all that great stuff.
Nice.
What do you have, Chip? Let's get ready. Let me rub my hands together.
All right, here we go. I'm going to screw up their names, though. What is it? Grunskaya?
Grusin, yeah, just the way it's the way it's written. Grusinskaya.
Grusinskaya. Okay. Shailene Woodley. Is that how you say her name? Shailene
Woodley. Yeah.
Shailene.
Something like that. But I know who you mean. The girl from
Shailene Woodley.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good.
The Baron. Oscar Isaac.
Cool. Oh, awesome. Yes. He's like a thief, but he's also like, that's why I was like, Bradley Cooper could be like, it's that same thing. Like you could be cool and you could also be a criminal, but he's also like the fucking coolest, nicest criminal you ever meet. Like he cares for people.
Yep. Flemshin, Kat Dennings.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I totally see Joan Crawford, her like, bigger boobs, but yeah, together.
Yeah, like the moment that I saw her face, like Joan Crawford's face, I went, holy crap. I was just like, I just knew. And the way she was responding, like the way that her and the Baron were kind of doing their back and forth and stuff, I was like, I could see.
Wasn't that great? Yes. Wasn't that great? Like, oh, you think reducing? What are you what are you trying to say?
Yeah. General pricing. Yes. Seth Rogen.
Oh wow. That went off the rails quick. Not in a good way, I mean.
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird. Like him being like a creeper. Interesting.
The moment that I saw like his frustration, like the character's frustration in making his dealings and the way that he dealt with people and just being so standoffish and just it was Seth Rogen, because picture this. This guy in this movie, you guys go watch it. He doesn't really laugh ever in this movie. So you're never going to hear Seth Rogen laugh. It's not going to be there because he's a creepy motherfucker.
Yeah.
So, but he would play this part so well.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be like, I remember people were upset because he was playing, what's the other, Wozniak. He was playing Wozniak in that Apple movie, and people are like, oh, him as Wozniak, but it was like, yeah, it fits. Like, and he didn't do it over the top and comedic, and Yep.
And then the last one is Otto
Kringeline.
Yes. Steve Buscemi.
Wow. Yes. Very cool. I love Steve Buscemi. There was a thing I was just thinking of the other day. We'll get to it when we get to some other stuff. But he brought tears to my eyes at this one movie he did. It was a thing that may be wrong now, but Louis C.K. did this series. And I watched it, and there was one scene where Steve Buscemi was playing like he was his brother, but he was a little crazy, and his brother's trying to manage him. But that just made I burst out in cheers for no reason. I didn't know why at the end of the movie. I'm like, what the fuck? At the end of that episode. But yes, those are perfect. I love those. I love mine. I love yours.
That's what I love about it, is that it's the casting, the way that people meld together, that it fits. And it's the same way that also having two different directors doing the same exact script could be totally different movie. You know, it's like having the people, they give it their life,
that's where I haven't told you, someday we'll do it, but Chip has never seen the original Dracula 31. So when they were filming Dracula in 31 during the day, with the American cast, then at night they did a Mexican version with all different actors, different director, and that movie is different but the same. But I almost like the Spanish version better than the American version. But way cool. How did this movie come into your life? Because of the show. My life was, I forget, but one day I was just like, Grand Hotel, let me watch it on Turner Classic Movies or somewhere. And I'm like, oh, John Barrymore, I've heard of him. That was the first time I saw him act. Lionel Barrymore, oh, I've seen him in other things, but maybe only It's a Wonderful Life at that time, like you. And then I was like, who is this fucking knockout girl? Oh my God, she is so beautiful, not wearing a bra through the whole thing. I love it. I'm like, who is this girl? And all of a sudden, I look it up and I'm like, that's fucking Joan Crawford. Like, I only knew Joan Crawford of Later in Life. Mommy Dearest did the movie about her adopted daughter. Like, and you're like, oh, this is the woman I know. I didn't know this beautiful fucking knockout, gorgeous, like beautiful, most beautiful woman I've probably ever seen. Actress, right, honey? Okay. So
if you hear smack, you know what happened.
And then that's right. And then Greta Garbo, I was just like, oh, like, you know, that was
watching Greta Garbo made me think of Pulp Fiction, of the girl that was with Bruce Willis.
Oh yeah, Anna. Her name was Anna. Yeah. I forget her name, but yeah.
It was just something about the way that they both held themselves, the way they spoke. It was I don't know. It's very awesome.
I wish I had a pot. You wish you had some pot? No, I wish I had a pot belly like Madonna in Lucky Star.
You had a pot belly, I'd punch you in it.
Yeah. You punch me in my belly? I am Fabi. I'm a retard. Don't use that stupid name. Mongoloid voice. I'm sorry. Okay. God, I love that. So now you ready to get to some listener opinions?
Oh yeah. Let's do it.
Here we go.
Well, you gotta have an opinion.
Well, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
I hated this movie.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I like it! Opinions vary.
Birding Lady wrote, quote, keep in mind it's 1932 and fabulous. I watched it many times, a favorite. Lionel's Kringeline was so good. Him and Joan were the heart of that movie for me. Mar underscore Del underscore Ray underscore Pardon, like Dolly Parton, wrote, brilliant, genius, timeless, one of the best movies ever made, unquote. Brothers in Armchairs podcast wrote, not really a thing, but he wrote, you guys going deep on the with this one, meaning like 1952. Yeah. Trixie underscore NYC wrote, I love it. Probably more for Lionel Barrymore's performance than for Garbo's. And I love Garbo, but Lionel Barrymore is just so good in this movie. End quote. I agree.
Yes, very much.
Akit underscore DDS wrote, I watched it recently for the first time and was blown away by Joan Crawford. I only really knew her from much later work and her reputation, but she is so vivacious and ridiculously beautiful in this. I had no idea she was like that. End quote. Gersende underscore Blythe wrote, I was heavily, all caps, disappointed by one, the ending. This is just not acceptable. Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Two, Garbo's acting game. She keeps using the same tone and face expressions. Obnoxious. But, in all caps, I still love this movie ever so dearly because of John, Lionel, which is incredibly moving, and Joan, in all caps. She had everything, the natural glamour, the humor, the emotion, the charm, everything. This got to be my favorite picture of hers. And oh, the charm of Baron Barrymore. So, yeah, I agree. And that's it for listener opinions.
That was good. That was quite a bit.
And I agree. And that's why a lot of people go, oh, Garbo, she's not really, she's better in Ninotchka or these other things. But she's good in this. The more you watch it, this was like my fifth time watching it, maybe fourth. And okay, maybe third or fourth. And it was like, and you pick up those things, like her picking up the phone, like certain things of her, and the way she's so despondent. And then when she meets him, she's just so lively. This movie cost $700,000 in early 1932. That's a hell of a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah.
And half of it was just to build the set with the elevator on it.
Yeah, well, and then I'm wondering about that too. I'm like, did that elevator really work, or are those just lights shining up, making it look like it moved, But maybe back then they weren't thinking that way. But sometimes you just go, oh, it's a light, and they just move the light up and it looks like it's moving. But also they made that round desk and like did 360 degree of like talking to people, and they never done that before. And they had that whole set. It was like huge. Yeah. So this part is really cool that I found out. Excuse me. John and Greta thought each would be difficult to work with from rumors they had heard on their own assumptions. The first day of filming, she was late. John thought, oh, here we go. Then a stagehand said that she was waiting outside to walk him in. Like she was just waiting, like to be like, let's go to our first day of work together.
Oh.
And when she came in, she said, this is a great day for me. I have looked forward to working with the great John Barrymore. He kissed her hand and said, my wife and I both think that you are the loveliest person in the world.
Wow.
And then from what I heard, like normally she would like go back to her trailer and do whatever, but she would stay there with John and talk about acting, and they just like,
That's awesome.
And there was something that I did that not come up? Hang on, I wrote something else down. There was something. Oh yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I just got to check through my notes because I wrote something. But anyway, what was I going to say? There was that I was watching these interviews. There was an interview with like Joan Crawford from like the 60s, maybe 70s. And these people always trying to dig up dirt. Like he's like, hey, Joan, like blah, blah, blah. And she's talking. He's like, now, when you made this movie, Grand Hotel, you were in there with John Barrymore. When you guys had your scenes, I've heard that John Barrymore was like smelly and he wouldn't bathe. And did you smell him?
Oh, wow.
And she's like, I could only smell myself. Like,
yeah.
And I smell lovely. And he's like, okay. And then they're like, and what about like, then I heard one with Marlene Dietrich, and they're like, what about Greta Garbo? Like, were you guys always like fighting or whatever? And she's like, because they're both like Swedish, or she's German and she's Swedish, Garbo's Swedish. And she's like, no, she was lovely person. I loved her. Like, and it was like, why trying to dig up dirt? Like, what the fuck? So very annoying. But
that's crap.
All right. You ready to discuss this thing?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Dr. Ottern Schlag, a disfigured veteran of World War I and a permanent resident of the Grand Hotel in Berlin, observes people coming, going, nothing ever happens, after which a great deal transpires.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I was thinking of this when the movie ended. Like, is he paying to stay there? Like, he's a permanent resident. Like, is he a doctor on call, like for the hotel or what?
Right.
Baron Felix von Geigern, who squandered his fortune and supports himself as a card player and occasional jewel thief, befriends Otto Kringelein, a dying accountant who has decided to spend his remaining days in the lap of luxury. Kringelein's former employer, Industrialist General Director of Pricing, is at the hotel to close an important deal, and he hires stenographer Flemschen to assist him. So I like the part where she meets the Baron, like that part that we talked about. It's like a great meet cute. Like he's like, do you want to? She's like, no. And he's like, oh, I know women with frocks. And she's like, do you know anybody that could afford one on their own? And you're kind of realizing like she wants to make her way up the ladder, but in a good way and not in a bad way. But later on, when Pricing approaches her with that thing, she's kind of like, I guess I can use this to get where I'm going, but she's still, you can see it in her face, her like not liking it when it gets to that point.
Yeah.
She aspires to be an actress and shows Pricing some magazine photos for which she posed. And you see he like stutters over his words when he sees her legs and he sees her pictures. And they did say in some conservative states, some of Joan Crawford's stuff was cut, like the legs, something that was too like sexy or whatever.
Oh, wow.
But 32, that was pre-code, but still they had to answer to some things for some states. So they would release different movies and different cuts in different states. It wasn't until like 34 when the Hays Code was fully enforced. Another guest is Russian ballerina Grusinskaya, whose career is on the wane. So I put here, poor woman doesn't want to perform, and that guy lies to her that people have been waiting since 6 p.m. to see the performance. Then she is so happy and ready to go. She's like, really? And then the other guy's like, really? And he's like, no, we need to get her to go. And you're like, motherfucker.
Yeah,
then
contracts. That's all he kept saying was contracts.
Yeah. Then there's the part where Flemschen is doing stenography for Pricing. Oh, and that's what I put. He is distracted, and she's disgusted by him. Like, even the little things that might have not been meant to be, but he puts his cigar down on the table and she like picks it up with 2 fingers and like moves it over to drop it into the ashtray. And like, she just like, it's just like gross. She's so happy though. She's like, that's me in the magazine. And she just joyful. When the Baron is in Grusinskaya's room to steal her jewelry and she returns from the theater, he hides in her room and overhears as she talks to herself about wanting to end it all. He comes out of hiding and engages her in conversation, and Grusinskaya finds herself attracted to him. So you are seeing how he is a nice man and not a common thief, is what I put here. Also, like, it's the thing of, he's like, I'm a baron. He meets Kringelein, like everything's good. And then when the chauffeur's got a cigarette in his mouth. He's like, what have I told you about having a cigarette in your mouth when you talk to me? What are you doing in the lobby? Supposed to be out at the car. And then you're like, oh, these guys, this is his criminal partner. Like, oh shit.
Yep.
And then you realize like, oh, the Baron's not what I thought. And also that part with Kringelein in the beginning at the front desk being like, the guy's like, well, maybe our rooms are too, he's like, because he's dressed a certain way. And he's like, I got the money, like, fuck you. Like, let me in my room.
Yep.
sometimes you wish these old movies would let him cuss because you could see, like, I wanted Lionel Barrymore to be like, "Fuck you, you fucking piece of shit," you know.
Well, he's trying to be as nice as possible.
Yeah. At first, until he gets
yeah.
drunk, and then he's like, just goes off on him. Like, if anybody had half the wits that you have, like this whole thing, like, so the Baron spends the night with her, with Grusinskaya. So here's another part that's really cool. So she asked for their scenes together to be a closed set, because also there'd be photographers and this whole thing to be like, oh, John Barrymore and Greta Garbo.
Yeah.
So preparing for a scene, he was heard saying to her, "You are the most enticing woman in the world." After cut, Garbo threw caution to the wind and lustfully kissed him, saying, "You have no idea what it means to me to play opposite so perfect an artist." He was dumbfounded.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was like, that's awesome. After this, Kringeline coming back to his room drunk is so much fun. You notice, like, that was like, because when he rolls off the bed, like, the camera's not on him on the bed, so it's almost like, do what you want, and the director's like, I guess follow him off the bed when he rolls off the bed, like, so good. Then you got pricing trying to still make another deal after the other one failed, but it seems like a no-go. So at first they're like, oh, you did make the deal with Manchester, and he's like, oh yes, of course. He lies to him, and then later he's like, no, I didn't, and they're like, oh fuck. And that's something else in the background. Joan Crawford's getting ready to pour him a drink, and then he hears them talking about him, and she like pulls the drink, you know, and then he goes over to yell at them. He's got like that much in his glass. But yeah, it's so cool. Jump in anytime, Chip. I'm getting parched here. The following morning,
my only thing is that the reaction and everything, that it just seemed like whenever Otto was in the room, he stole the scenes.
Yeah.
To everything, just because of his the way the character was written very much is because of the fact that he, even when he was in his most depressed state because of, you know, the general being around, you know, that was usually the worst moments, was when he had to see him and just be reminded of him. Even in those moments, he still stole the scenes because of his, you know, fighting with him or whatnot. But then when he was the happiest person, because he knows he's dying and he just wants to live life to the fullest, it was just crazy how much he would just take over. And I don't know, it was just crazy. And in seeing that, I love that. I love those moments. That's why I, you know, thought that Steve Buscemi would be a good fit for that moment, because he could really take the being so frustrated with, you know, with his lot in life, but then turning around and being, let's party. You know, give me a, whatever he called it, the
what was that drink?
Was it the Louisiana Flip or something like that?
Louisiana Flip, yeah. And but yeah, it was that. And also people were saying John Barrymore, when they were talking to Joan Crawford, they were like, he was known to try to upstage actors, and she's like, John Barrymore, she's like, oh yeah, he did, but people said when John and Lionel are on stage, like, you're looking at Lionel, like, you're like, you know, you know. But yeah, it was all, out of this whole thing, Otto is like the coolest character, just because he's dying, and you're like, that's what I'd do if I didn't have, you know. And he already went, he's like, I went to the doctor already, there's nothing they can do. And you know, and then when she's like, let's do something, we'll get to that later. The following morning, the Baron returns Grusinskaya's jewels, and she forgives his crime. And she's just so happy now. Like, you saw this whole turn. And in real life, not to bring a downer, in real life, they were saying they couldn't, like, Greta Garbo didn't want, like, this movie sticks in the zeitgeist of everything of Hollywood, because her thing was like, she wanted to be let alone. Like, people are like, oh, you said I want to be alone, like, that's you. And she's like, no, I said I want to be let alone. Like, I don't want camera people, I don't want, you know, photographer. Like, she would just go home and just, you know, at the end of her life, she was living in New York, going for walks with like friends that would come over, and they'd just go for walks, and you'd see her walking down the street, and it was Greta Garbo, and she had money in stocks and all kinds of money. It was worth a lot of money.
Wow.
And But it's that thing where, so they were saying she might have been manic depressive and not known it, because back then nobody knew it. Nobody diagnosed it till like the 80s, 90s. I don't know when it was, 2000s. She invites him to accompany her to Vienna, an offer he accepts. And so it's a thing where he's not using her for the money, because for one, she's like, well, if you need it, then take the pearls. I don't care. Like, this is just things, like, take it. And he's like, no. And that's the coolest thing about him, is he's always like, no, I'm not going to take your money. I'm not going to take this. Like, I'll do it on my own, till he gets really in a corner. And then he's like, maybe. And then he changes his mind again.
Yeah.
But where he's not using her, he's as in love with her as she is with him. Yeah. Like, it's really cool.
Well, and that's the thing with him, is as his character, it was almost he was a good guy to a fault, where it was his addiction to gambling that was what was pushing him in, making these bad decisions. But he was trying to do the best he could beyond those decisions to get that money. He was so close to screwing over, a couple people throughout the movie, but changed his mind.
Yeah.
And then the worst person possible to try and screw over, was the worst decision he made.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing of him telling her, like, I fell on hard times and I just need this money, and I'll go gamble and I'll win some money. I'll do something, Pricing lies and says that the Manchester deal actually went through and the other company believes it. The Baron, Flamchen, and Kringeline meet at the bar. Flamchen finds out the Baron fell in love last night. So that's that part where she's thinking, like, oh, this is my guy. Like, I do like this guy, like, right away. And then when he tells her, like, I fell in love last night, she doesn't change. She doesn't, like, shut down. She's still, like, engaging with him. Like, it's really cool.
Well, and the cool part about that is the fact that he's always honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, to a fault, to the point where when he tells her, it isn't out of malice. He's not trying to hurt her.
Yeah.
He's telling her the truth.
Being honest with her, of like, she's like, I tried to call. He's like, here's where I was.
Yeah.
Kringeline sees Pricing, and Pricing is rude. That's what I wrote. Flamchen dances with Kringeline. So Pricing is just like being real rude and funny. And John, the Baron, steps in, is like, is there a problem? Like, he's always there to back his buddy up. And then even, I think it's coming around here where Flamchen is talking to Pricing. They went off in a corner. They're talking. He's trying to tell her, like, I'm married, but maybe if we went together, we got a room. And you can see her eyes of like, oh, here we go again. And then also, though, when John Barrymore walks by, she's like, Baron, oh, like trying to, like, get out of this awkward thing to talk to him. And then he's like, we're having a conversation here. Can't you leave? And it's like, motherfucker. So I love how she says that she is. So when Flemchen dances with Kringeline, and he's like, he keeps looking at his feet. She's like, you're supposed to look at me. And she's like, you're sweating. Like, what's going on? And then she's like, can we stop dancing? I'm tired. And you're like, oh, that's so sweet, because she knows he's having such a difficult time that she just like, I'm tired and I want to stop dancing. And it's because she sees that he's nervous trying to dance. And it's a sweet moment. I just love it.
Yeah. And it's cool because he knows what she's actually doing. And he says, thank you.
Yeah. And Kringeline confronts Pricing, which we said, so great. Like him just like, I did your books. I know that you fucking suck at business.
Yeah.
Pricing, and this is where Pricing is offering Flamchen a job, basically to be his side piece. She does not, in my words, not Wikipedia. She does not like that at all. The Baron is desperate for money to pay his way out of the criminal group he has been working with. He and Kringeline get a card game going, and Kringeline wins everything, then becomes intoxicated. So that's that part two. In the beginning, they went out and had a whole good day. Like when they're at the bar, he's like, oh yeah, we flew in a plane, we drove in a car, like we did all this. And then when they're outside and John, the Baron, he's like, were you serious about what you told me about needing money? And the Baron, and you're thinking the Baron's going to go, you know what? I was just kidding. And the Baron, again, like you said, honest to a fault, is like, no, really, I am. I fell on hard times and I need money. And Kringleine's like, I can give you 300. And he's like, that's really not, I need 5,000. That's really nice of you. But you only have 6. I need 3, I can't, 300. No, you keep your money. I'll figure it out. And then they're like, what about a card game? Kringleine's like, I always wanted to gamble. Like, this would be fun. Never had the money.
Because earlier he was talking about going to a casino, like that he wanted to do with the lights of a casino or whatever he mentioned earlier on. So when they bring this up, it kind of came full circle.
Yeah. And the Baron is so nice to him, helping him gamble. So when he's like, Baron lost all his money, he's over there pouring a drink. He's like, Baron, will you help me? And he's like, okay, what do you got? Oh, you got this. And then they're all like, forget. And he wins the pot again. And in normal gambling or in other gambling movies, people are angry. If that guy wins, you can't just walk away with the big pot. These guys, there's one guy who's kind of serious, but the others are just smiling that this guy's so happy that he's dying, that he was able to gamble. They lost money to a nice guy. They're fine with, they got enough money. They're staying at the Grand Hotel.
Well, and in watching that, it made me wonder if this was they were doing that on purpose. They were losing to him.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think so, but yeah. But that's a good way to look at it.
Well, considering that the doctor was there, they would all know from the doctor letting them know that he is dying.
Well,
these are all very rich people.
Yeah, and I think that he tells everybody, but I don't think that Baron would have played had that happen. Baron lost money. This was another time for Baron to actually win, and Baron lost. And you're like, oh shit. When Kringlein drops his wallet, the Baron stashes it in his pocket, intending to keep not only the winnings, but the funds that will see Kringlein through the last weeks of his life. However, moved by the sight of Kringlein's despair, the Baron, who desperately needs the money, but has become very fond of Kringlein, pretends to have discovered the wallet and return it to him. And you saw the doctor kind of like sees him, and the doctor's like, well, it's good that you found that. And he's like, yes, it's very good. And you're like, oh, fuck. So, but I think the doctor knows that the Baron's a good guy and like something was going on.
Yeah.
As part of a desperate merger plan, Pricing must travel to London, and he asks Flemchen to accompany him. Later, when the two are in her room, which opens onto his, Pricing sees a shadow of the Baron rifling through his belongings. He confronts the Baron. The two struggle, and Pricing bludgeons the Baron with the telephone, killing him. So that was one where it didn't say here, but the Baron's like, you know what? I'm sorry. Here's your money back. Yeah. And he gives him the money, gives him the wallet back. And he's still like, no, I'm going to call the police because he knows that Flemchen likes him over him. And he's just jealous and angry. And he's like, no, fuck you. I'm going to call the police. And then Baron's like, no, and tries to get away, and he beats him and kills him with the telephone. Flemchen sees what happened and then runs to Kringlein's room. And then Kringlein confronts Pricing and goes in there, and Pricing's like, no, he stole my money, and why don't we talk about this? And he's like, no. Like, I was just watching a documentary with it was about the robbing of the Brinks in 93. But one of the guys was like, when I met this cop, I was like, okay, you're going to be in court. And the cop was like, well, what do you want me to say? He's like, what? No, you don't. You say what happened. I don't tell you what to say. And that's how this is. He's like, Pricing's like, hang on, we got to talk about this. And Kringlein's like, no, you're going to jail. You don't kill a guy, even if he did try to steal. You don't kill a guy for stealing your wallet. Like, what the fuck?
Well, and the whole point of him not just trying to change the narrative on that, he was trying to change the narrative on her being in the other room because of the fact that his wife was going to find out about all this. Yeah. So he had to make it out like that she was in on it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Flemchen she was in your room, right? And he's like, no, like, we're calling the police. Like, there's no out of it. Yeah. And he insists he acted in self-defense, but Kringlein summons the police and Pricing is arrested, which is great. He's like, do we really need these cuffs? And they're like, yeah. He's like, okay, sir. Calls him sir and everything. He's still nice. Here's the saddest part of the movie. Grusenskaya departs for the train station, expecting to find the Baron waiting for her there. So she trying to call him. The phone's ringing, and the dog is just like there by itself. Like you're like, I hope somebody found that dog. Like, please, somebody go clean that room. Expecting to find the Baron waiting for her there. Meanwhile, Kringeline offers to take care of Flemschen, who suggests they seek a cure for his illness. As they leave the hotel, Dr. Otterschlag again observes, Grand Hotel, always the same. People come, people go, nothing ever happens. The end.
So that the doctor,
yes,
I see him as the guy at the beginning and the end of Pretty Woman, the guy on the street.
Yeah, which guy? Who played the guy in the street?
He was like he was
who
just
was the
some
actor? Oh, he's just a guy that
yeah,
was talking about.
Yeah,
the fairy tale of Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
But also at the same time, it was kind of weird because the way that character was kind of there throughout everything.
Mm-hmm.
I really kind of had this like, is this some overarching thing where they're kind of insinuating, which I think I've already brought this up in like one of the previous things, but it just kind of felt like he was kind of the devil watching everything happen. The bad things were happening, kind of a thing. I was this is creepy. Like this guy's just kind of there and just kind of like trying to kind of influencing things without really influencing things. I was like, this is weird with the thing on his face. I was like, I don't know. It was almost like
but then he would have told the Baron like keep right. It was like a Mask of the
yes.
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
But he would have told the Baron, no, you keep that. Just put that wallet back. Like, keep it. We're going to fuck up Kringeline's life now. Let's watch this.
Oh, and that's what I mean is that it's kind of, he made the comment because he knows that he put it like, oh, you just found it kind of a thing. Like he knows all kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of weird that it was like he's influencing, but not influencing. And it was so weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sitting here going, he says that at the end of the movie, you know, but the young couple just came in.
Yeah.
The married couple to the newlyweds. And I'm sitting here going, I want to keep watching. I want to know what the fuck keeps happening. Like the next group of 5 people are coming in and shit's going to go wrong.
You see the people that have driven cross country in their old car, they're all dusty with the goggles on. He's like, come on, honey, get out this way. And you're like, what's their story? What's this story? Yeah. And that's where later on they were going to do a remake in, forget what year, the 90s or something. And MGM had the MGM in Vegas, and they were going to film there. They were going to be like filming our luscious hotel. And then all of a sudden they pulled out and said, no, they're going to have William Goldman, the famous screenwriter. They're going to have him do it. And then he went there, but then they had bought by Bally's. So then they were like, okay, Bally's, anybody can come in. So he went in to do a tour. And then he realized, no, it's not going to work. You know, we can't do this movie. Like, it's not as fabulous and grand as the Grand Hotel.
Well, and you were talking about doing the remake of this movie.
Right.
Right. And rewriting, doing a new script. What I would do is I would actually do the last bit of this movie and lead into another movie. I would have these actors that you had planned.
Oh, right.
To do the ending because everybody knows this movie. They'd watch this movie or whatever, and then they'd go and they'd watch this, and they would see the end with
Otto and Flemschen leave, and the ballerina go to Vienna. Yeah,
and it would be an all new cast of people coming in for the young couple pulling up in the car with the goggles, everything, all that happening, and you're like, oh, it's a whole new thing. Like that would be so cool.
But also, though, when you think about movies now, like that movie would go direct to streamer, Grand Hotel 2, you know. And I guess they tried to make, I didn't look it up enough, but when I do this research when I'm looking at stuff on YouTube, there was a Grand Hotel TV show and it got canceled after 1 season, I think. But I think it was the same kind of idea. And that's what, if you go back to the show Hotel with James, what's her name's husband?
And
what's his name's father?
Like Thanos' father.
Yes. But you have a phone. But James, not Coburn. Damn it. Anyway, the guy from he was in.
Hold on, I'm looking.
Movie. Remember that horror movie he was in? Amityville Horror. Look up that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's but anyway, one is James and one is I forget. Anyway, hold with it. But let me tell you this while you're thinking of that, while you're working on that. At the premiere of the okay, yes. Brolin, yes. James Brolin, yes.
Yes.
And Josh Brolin. Yes. Okay. So James Brolin in the show Hotel, Betty Davis's like last thing that she did was in that. But anyway, yes. At the premiere, they said that Garbo would make an appearance after the film. So everybody's waiting. And you can look on YouTube, look up the Grand Hotel premiere. It's like a 9-minute thing of like all these, they redid the round desk in the front lobby, and they put that out front of Grauman's Chinese Theater. And all these actors would come up and they had to sign the logbook. And so like Clark Gable's signing it, like all these people, the director comes in, Louis B. Mayer. And they said, and I was thinking of this too, you got like all these actors that you only see on screen and now they're there. And they broke through the chains and tried to converge on, and the cops had to like push them back. Like it was getting a little crazy because they had everybody there. So then they were like, oh, Garbo will show up at the end of the movie. You know, everybody will see her, you know, at the premiere. But she did not. And instead, Wallace Beery came out in drag saying, I want to be alone. This did not go over well. And Garbo was at home with friends. Like she was just chilling at the house. So yeah, it was that was interesting. This won Best Picture in 1932, the Oscar. It is the only picture to ever be nominated for Best Picture, but not nominated in any other category. No acting, no writing, no directing, just that.
That's crazy. Well, and I think that the announcer before the movie said something about that. Even I thought that she had said that a lot of those awards weren't even invented yet. A lot of the ones we're used to.
Yeah, I think like supporting actor, I think came later from what I watched another movie recently called Tukopki, and it had, and I had always heard of this guy, Peter Ustinov, and Peter Ustinov won for this movie, and he's really good in it, but they were saying like semi-recently that came up. But anyway.
I had an opening and I could have said, bless you. Damn it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Peter Cushing. Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, perhaps less a true film than a series of star-studded vignettes, Grand Hotel still remains an entertaining look back at a bygone Hollywood era. So I give this movie 5 out of 5 celluloid hearts. I was fighting with it, and I say, you know what? It's a good, solid movie. And here's what, whenever Chip has a movie that he's never seen before, I'm always like, oh, is Chip going to come at me with 1 heart? That's all I give it. Fuck you. This movie sucked. Why'd you waste my life? Or is he going to, but then I always go, Chip saw goodness in this movie. It's not Spawn. He knows that. But anyway, what do you give it?
I would say 5. I wanted to give it 4.5 at first, just because I was honestly, the only thing that irritated me about this movie, the only thing was the directing. They editing at point, because there was too many points where it was like they had the phone on this side, it went to this side, like right away cutting.
Right.
Moments where one was looking at them at one side of their shoulder, and then all of a sudden it would cut to them being at the other side of the shoulder. It was things like that just stand out to me too much, and it annoys the shit out of me.
Right.
I
did notice. Do you remember the part in the beginning where I think it's the Baron's talking to a guy, and the guy's in the middle of talking, and the scene cuts, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like that was a weird edit.
That was the first thing that shoot out at me was that, and then because of that, it kind of opened me up to everything else that happened in the movie. If that wasn't there, it might have made it harder for me to see these little weird cut things. But because that was such an abrupt cut from somebody speaking to all of a sudden cutting to somebody on the other side of the table, asking about something to the clerk and everything, it threw everything off. But everything else, like as far as the movie itself, the story, the way everything went, the characters, everything was amazing. It was great. I loved how it all melded together. It's very much this thing that I promote all the time. Like I think I first mentioned it in Empire Records. that you can have all these different characters, all these different people playing such different characters. They play their roles perfectly. Nobody melds into each other to where you're like, they could have just done away with a character and it wouldn't have mattered. Like everybody has their part to play. And that is what I love about movies like this.
Yeah. Well,
and it's one of the originals when you look at it this way, because of the fact that it's an all-star cast. It's one of the originals. So.
Yeah. This is I think somebody's talking about something else, but this is like Endgame. Like it's got everybody in it. Mm-hmm. But there was a thing. No, it was Petro Patsilivas with the Caged In podcast. He was saying Massive Weight of Talent is his Endgame of like going through all the Nicolas Cage movies.
That's awesome.
I was on Petros' show. Everybody check out Caged In podcast. Stolen from like 2012 is when the movie is made, but I did that a couple years ago. It was a fun episode. So yeah, wrapping up this movie, it's about I was talking to somebody, I forget who it was. Somebody was saying they could argue like anything coming out has a message, a theme. And this one has that theme of like, living life, enjoying life, like not letting things get you down, like, but also, like you said, it makes you sad they're like, don't tell Grusinskaya, just let her get on the train and we'll tell her later. And then they're going to tell her like, and it's like so sad. So Phil's film favorite of the week. Are you ready for this? Kind of ties in with this.
Very cool.
So I put on this movie. I guess I should jump to keep it on Front Street. So I'm on HBO Max. I go, you know what? I've seen every Steven Spielberg movie. I've seen them all.
At first, it scared me. I almost thought you were going to say Steven Seagal. It scared the shit out of me. I thought you were basically going to put yourself through some shit and be like, I've seen them all. I got to watch this last piece of crap.
He plays a general in some of them, but the best Steven Seagal movie is Extreme, whatever it was, where he fell out of the plane and died. That was the best.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, Kurt Russell. No, so I'm like, I should watch West Side Story. I hated the one from 1960s. When I went through the AFI list, the 5 that I hadn't seen, I watched West Side Story and I didn't like it much. Okay. My dad a long time ago was like, I saw this movie. It blew my mind when it came out in 1960. It's called West Side Story. And I watch it and I go to watch it and I go, it starts out with music, it's a musical, Dad. And he's like, yeah, I thought it was better. And then when I see him like jets and sharks and he's like, then I'm like, what was I thinking? But I'm like, well, you were like 12 or 13. So you were into it.
Yeah.
So I put on West Side Story and I'm like, and I'm in the kitchen. I'm kind of making notes on the podcast and I'm kind of watching it. And right away, there's music, of course. I know it's a musical, but I'm like, do I feel like watching this? Should I just turn it off? So it starts going through and I'm like, I should just forget it. Like I'm going to turn it off and I'll either watch this some other time or this will be the Steven Spielberg movie that I don't watch because I don't care about it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it gets like maybe a quarter of the way in. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is okay. This is good. This is because what he did, he went back to, he had bought the original before the movie came out. He bought the play, the musical version. He bought that on LP and he would play that all the time and he loved it. And so what he wanted to do was go back to basics, not remake the movie, but remake the musical. So I'm watching it. So all of a sudden,
was the musical question? I don't know if you know this.
Okay.
Was the musical, the play or whatever, was that the first iteration or was there a book before that?
No, I think it was a play first, went right from play from the musical to the movie. And, and then the movie was directed by our guy, Robert Weiss, who does the biggest shot of the Starship Enterprise in the first movie. It takes 20 minutes to show the Enterprise because it's so huge. It's a miniature, but it looks so huge.
Huge.
Yeah. Nuclear vessel. And so he so all of a sudden I get sucked in and I'm like, I like Ansel Elgort or whatever his name is, the guy from Baby Driver. He's in it. what's her name from the original musical, and I think the original movie and the musical.
Rita Moreno.
Rita Moreno's in it. I'm like, oh, I love her.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, I'm invested, and I'm like, this is done really well. It's done good, and
Sweet.
and if you don't know about West Side Story, it's like Romeo and Juliet. It's that kind of thing. The Montagues and the Capulets are the Jets and the Sharks.
Yeah, I always kind of in my head I visioned it as a singing Outsiders.
Yeah, but different because of the love interest, because there was no love interest other than did Ponyboy really love Ralph Macchio? Yeah, he did.
Oh yeah.
But
Stay golden.
That's right. Anyway, Stay Gold, Ponyboy.
Well, everybody loved Cherry though, so I mean,
which one was Cherry?
The girl, like the main girl in Outsiders.
The Outsider? I don't know. I only watched the dudes, man. I saw Tom Cruise. I saw Patrick Swayze.
You saw Patrick Swayze flip over the chain link fence, and you're like, I'm gone.
Yeah. I'm like,
he did the backwards, like the handstand flip, turn around, and I was like, that was badass. I want to try that, and I go kill myself.
Yeah. That's where, but anyway, so I'm sorry, I could go off because I was going to go off on, if you watch the movies that made us, there's a Dirty Dancing one, and they talk about how his legs were like fucked up, like his knees were hurting him doing that dance on the stage. And then they were like, now we need you to run and jump off the stage and do that famous jump that he does. And he had to do it like 4 times or something. And he was like, it was killing him, and but it movie history. Anyway, so I'm watching West Side Story, right? And I'm like, what am I gonna get? Like 3.5? Because I'm gonna do a letterbox, because I put everybody look up letterbox. I'm trying to get Chip on there. And all of our movies, there's a list of all the movies that we've done on Letterboxd. So I'm watching it, and all of a sudden, toward the end, it gets to like the killings of, like one of the guys dies, and then the other one.
Yeah, don't ruin it for me.
I know. But all of a sudden, at the end, I'm just like, I'm almost like I was with the thing I told you about Steve Buscemi, the Louis C.K. show, where it just hit me. All of a sudden, I'm getting choked up and teary-eyed, and I'm like, wow, that movie hit me. Like, the music was great. It was directed great. It was, Vilos Zygmunt did all the cinematography. Done really well. And but anyway, it just blew me away. So I gave it like 4.5. I might give it 4, but I'm thinking 4.5 just because at first I was like, I almost turned it off. And then I stuck with it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. So it's not for everybody. I know my wife would hate it because it's a musical. It's 2.5 hours. That was the other reason why I was like, could I watch this, or should I watch like the Mighty Peking Man, which let's get to some fun stuff. So my wife bought me that Shaw Brothers set of like kung fu movies, but also on there is the Peking Man, which is Hong Kong's version of King Kong. And so it's a guy in a suit, but he's got a mask on, but you can see his eyes, and he's tearing up the town, but he's in love with this girl when they find him in his jungle, just like King Kong, in love with this girl. Then they bring him over on a boat, and then he's so in love with the girl, and then he goes crazy, and she has to calm him down. That movie ends in this fucking, like, I'm like, holy shit. Like, I'll just tell you, because you won't see it. She dies. I believe she dies.
Oh, damn.
Like, he's holding her, and the planes are shooting at him up on this building, and it's hitting her. And she's like, oh. And he's trying to protect her, and she's still being shot. Then he drops her down. The boyfriend, whatever, picks her up, runs down the stairs, and then looks out after that guy dies. He's looking out a hole in the building, and he's holding her in his arms, and the movie ends. And I'm like, I think she was dead, because he picked her up and she's lifeless. And then he carries her, and I'm like, holy shit. So that ended different than King Kong, but it was fun.
Peking.
That's right. It was a fun movie. And then they filmed it in they went to Thailand, filmed it there. So, but it had Danny Lee from The Killer in it. And not a cop this time. He's like a drunk guy that they were like, we need your help to go into the jungle. And he's like, all right.
So basically, John McClane from like the third movie.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
we need your help to go and stop the bad things from happening. Well, but I'm on a bender. Fuck.
Exactly. Pretty much. Anyway, you ready to tell them what's coming up?
Yes.
All right. We will be back on March 25th for...
Too quiet in here, don't you think?
Bad Times at the El Royale is the best thriller in years.
Each time you break away,
It's daring and original. A noir masterpiece. 4 stars. It's full of twists and viciously unpredictable.
You know something, don't you?
Bad Times at the El Royale. Rated R. October 12th.
That's right. From 2018, it's Bad Times at the El Royale. So
another movie I have not seen.
I am so excited about this. And this is another one where I was talking about, like, the TV spot that I played doesn't even do it justice. So if you haven't seen this movie, just go see the movie. You haven't watched a trailer and you're like, the trailer's better because it's 2 hours and whatever. But when you see a trailer and you hear it on a podcast, totally different. You know, you can't see the visuals. So I try to pick a TV spot that kind of has a lot of dialogue or words in it. But this movie, when I saw, I was like, oh my God, it was one of those right away. I was like, I got to buy this right away. Like, holy shit.
Oh, that reminds me, I got to buy Spider-Man. That came out digital.
I bought it the other day. It came out on Tuesday. At first they were like, buy it, get it on the 22nd. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden they were like, no, it's released a week early. And I'm like, sweet. Okay. So I bought it.
Nice.
So yeah. But anyway, Chip, certain movies stick with you. They stay in your head and heart forever. Hopefully this one will with you. So from all of us at My Celluloid Heart, keep watching movies. You have anything to end on?
Yeah, everybody go watch this old movie.
Wow.
It's a good one.
Is that a way to sell it? Old movie? You might have shut some people.
It's an oldie, but a goodie.
There you go. Okay.
That's
it. Yes. Yeah. In 1930. And the thing I was watching also, it didn't have, like you were talking about Asphalt Jungle. You were like, the music didn't like rise and fall. It wasn't, this one didn't even have that as much. It had the regular kind of symphony playing, but it didn't hit you with dun, 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 like none of that stuff. So it was cool.
Yep.
But yes, everyone, check it out and check out Bad Times at the El Royale for next time. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.